And now the forgotten video games of 1984.
Pat here with the forgotten video games of 1984. Bruce Lee by Datasoft. Play as the legendary martial artist in this computer beat-em-up platformer hybrid. The Three Stooges by Milestar Electronics. Take control of the famous comedy trio as you slap faces and throw cream pies in this single-screen action game. Nyuk, nyuk, nyuk. Sea Stalker by Infocom. This computer text adventure has you unraveling a mystery in an underwater research lab. And Tower of Druaga by Namco. This maze action RPG features Gilgamesh battling 60 levels of difficulty on his way to defeating the evil Druaga. Those were the forgotten video games of 1984. Just because you don't remember them doesn't mean they weren't fun.
Space Ace.
Remember last year, Dragon's Lair? Let's do that again, but in the future.
Space Ace was the second Laserdisc game to be done by Don Bluth and his animation studio.
So after we had Dragon's Lair the year before, Space Ace came out and I was super hyped to play this game.
Oh, hell yeah.
But you know, it was kind of a letdown though. I just didn't like the theme of it as much. I don't know, the atmosphere was just a little different.
It just wasn't as fun, and I don't think it quite had the humor that Dragon's Lair did either.
Same sort of issues from Dragon's Lair. You know, if you were good at looking at blinky things and following along on the screen, you do well.
Dragon's Lair was a little monotonous. It added a new feature in that you could, at times in the game, change from older Ace to younger Ace, also known as Dexter.
In Space Ace, you keep getting turned into a kid by the Infanto Ray. It's clever. Think about it, Infanto. It's like infant with an O.
And I always wondered why, you know, when Dexter turned into Space Ace and became this hulking awesome dude, then he retransformed back into Dexter, he had to be pissed off. I mean, why would you want to go back to this little weakling guy when you could be Space Ace?
Dude, that's our target audience you're talking about there.
I feel like Space Ace's difficulty increased considerably over Dragon's Lair. I can, and obviously it's just memorization, but I can work my way through most of Dragon's Lair no problem. Even if I know what I'm doing in Space Ace, I feel like the timing windows are much shorter.
Sure.
To be quite honest, the thing I want to talk about is the weirdest name ever in a video game. Borf. The evil villain is Borf.
Commander Borf? It sounds like someone from New Jersey saying, "Oh, I got a Borf. I got a Borf." That's a bad impression. I'm sorry, Pat.
You know, you go from a big muscle-bound guy to a little dweeby kid, basically, back and forth, which makes it entertaining, all the while trying to save hot Kimberly.
Laserdiscs, like any other mechanical media, they end up deteriorating and they get laser rot.
Right.
And just like tapes would break down, you know, on the tape-based games. So it was a magical time in the arcades where they actually had so many mechanical moving parts going on in a machine itself to create something that looked unlike anything else there.
I used to play Lode Runner on my Commodore 64. That game was great.
The game's actually fairly complex. The method of attacking or staying alive is very weird in Lode Runner. The levels are all made up of bricks and ladders and, you know, wires that you can cross. And you have a little gun, and you can use that gun to zap a hole either into the left or to the right of you.
You would dig holes and then just allow pursuers to fall into, and you could just walk over their heads, no big deal.
What was neat about Lode Runner is, well, it was kind of reminiscent of, I don't know, like a Bagman type of game where you're in a mine and you had to, you know, collect all this gold.
So it's not like Pac-Man where the gold is stationary and you can always see it. The enemies can pick up the gold and move it around, and sometimes you don't know which enemies have it, and you won't know if they have it until you zap a hole in the ground and they fall in, which leaves the gold above their head.
So that's a discovery element that not many games had.
Right.
And that hole would either close and kill that enemy, or the enemy would pop back out. And, you know, it was kind of like, had a timing element.
That's horrific.
Yeah.
This sucker was ported over to most of the computer systems. Commodore 64 it was on. Apple II.
It got very big in Japan. It got a Famicom release.
So one of the cool things about Lode Runner is the fact that not only did it feature 150 levels, but it was one of the first games that included its very own level editor. So you could create your own levels in this game.
You could send them in, and they actually compiled the best levels into a disc called Championship Loadrunner.
That was such a popular element that many gaming magazines at the time would run contests where people would just submit their own levels that they've created and they would hand out prizes for the best.
What I like about the game is that how fluid the animation is. That's what I always like. And how fluidly you can go from running around down a ladder to like on the rope, you know, hand walking, like it's all very smooth. That's what I liked about the game.
In 1984, we get 1942.
What?
By Capcom.
Capcom put it out, and it was a huge hit for Capcom. Capcom has arrived.
Right. This is one of their first forays in the arcade scene where they actually had a hit and became recognized.
Yeah.
It's the first entry in a long-running Capcom series, and it's a top-down shooter where you control a little warplane, and you can do loop-de-loops, and you can fire, and basically all your goal, the only goal is to go from aircraft carrier to aircraft carrier and shoot down all the waves of enemies as it gets progressively more and more difficult.
1942 is based on World War II, and the point of the game was to fly to Tokyo and take out the entire Japanese air fleet.
I think you're forgetting something very important. You're destroying the Japanese in that game. You're American. So what type of World War II guilt does Capcom have as they're designing a game where they're just getting destroyed?
Best soundtrack ever in a game. Beep, 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 beep.
Can you believe it? We're about to talk about NES games.
The arcade games first.
Yeah. But they're the games that were on the NES.
The Versus Systems arcades by Nintendo, introduced in 1984, a year before the NES was introduced in the North American market. It was Nintendo's way of bringing Nintendo games to the market before they had an opportunity to play it at home.
They had about 30 games released, including a lot of the original black box games.
The Nintendo Versus system was more or less upconverted games from the home console into the arcade.
Hey, we got these games over here, maybe you'll play, maybe you'll like these games, maybe a year from now you'll see these games on something else we have planned.
It's like a drug pusher at an elementary school.
Kind of, but you still paid for the first hit in quarters.
There were some things that were a little bit different. For example, Super Mario Brothers in the arcade was a lot harder than it was at home. Also, Duck Hunt Versus, you could shoot the dog. You could finally shoot the dog in the bonus round. Best day in video game history.
Not all Versus, but a number of the Versus cabinets were Versus. Like, in the sense, you versus a buddy.
They had a whole bunch of different setups. You had ones that were like two connected cabinets together to play two-player games with your own screen.
I like seeing the red units sit down, like...
Oh, the red tents.
The red, yeah. They're so cool.
Yeah.
By the time the NES hit the year later, when I actually purchased the NES and brought it home, it felt like literally bringing the arcade experience home to me, which was sweet.
This was part of those building blocks into making the NES the juggernaut it was.
Nintendo, you're kind of just putting your toe in the water, testing out the market to see. You're trying to see if people want these games, maybe in the future for something coming out. Toe in the water. Oh my God, Elite is incredible.
It was one of the first home computer games that used 3D wireframe graphics with line removal, so it didn't look like you could see through the whole thing.
It is really the first open world game. It is a space game where you can be a bounty hunter, you can do like escort missions, but mainly you're trading.
It's a space trading game. It's kind of an open-ended space game where you are buying items and selling them at a higher price.
You're going from planet to planet, you're flying around with cargo, and you're trying to make money to upgrade your ship upgrades, upgrade your parts, your lasers, your hyperdrive, things like that.
It's pretty technologically advanced on how they generated levels with these wireframes on an 8-bit computer system.
There was, the way it was programmed was, procedurally, it would like randomly create like planets in 8 different galaxies. Each game had 8 galaxies, and each galaxy had something like, it was like 256 planets in each galaxy.
The worlds were procedurally generated using a fixed algorithm, so they had to go through and make sure, for one thing, that there were no profane words for their planets. So after looking through, they had to remove a galaxy because one of the planets was named Arse.
And so it would randomly like create the planets and like the conditions for the planet, like how much different cargo was worth coming and going from these planets.
Inspirations that the game designer had came from 2001, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica.
Even though you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, it just feels like there's so much more to it than there actually is. Finding space stations, docking with them, getting all the upgrades, getting into the dogfights, going in warp speed and getting intercepted by the enemy.
It really showed how powerful British game making could be. So as everything was falling apart in the United States, things were still really big in Britain and in Japan.
It was what spawned an entire genre. Sadly, you don't see much anymore, but you know, it spawned games like
Freelancer, Privateer,
Lightspeed,
even stuff like EVE Online. They have to thank Elite for that.
So Karate Champ is the video game that allowed Dukes and Jackson to first meet each other in the fantastic movie Bloodsport.
Karate Champ was released by Data East, and it really couldn't come out at a better time. I mean, karate in America was kind of on the rise. Karate Kid came out the same year. So, you know, it almost like was like a natural thing to make karate games at this time.
Yeah, or at least port them over here, because people were all about karate.
And it has an incredibly unique control scheme. It uses 2 joysticks, and depending on how you position those joysticks, you will pull off an array of different moves. I believe it's 20 plus.
There's 20 plus moves in Karate Champ. I'll be damned if I can do more than 4 of them.
What is this even? I don't get it. You choking somebody? That would make sense if you're choking them.
You know, you'd have to put a combination of joystick moves, you know, up on one joystick, down on one joystick, and that would always do like a backflip. Forward would do something like, I don't know, like some kind of kick or something.
It was almost like physically emulating karate.
Yeah, if you could do everything with your hands.
Yeah, well, my analogy kind of dies at that point.
You have like half points and points. Every time you get a point, you know, the round, beep, okay, stop, hold on, reset, start over. You know, it's kind of one of those things. It's like fencing.
I always thought the main judge was a fat female.
Yeah.
It could be. It could be a guy too, though. I really don't know. Very unhappy, too.
Why is the judge so unhappy? Like, no matter what's going on in that game, no matter what you're doing, the whole time he's got this massive frown, this whole face.
I remember with my buddies after playing a big tournament of Street Fighter 2 at my house, we popped in Karate Champ and said like, well, let's take a break from Street Fighter 2 and do Karate Champ, which is a far more disappointing experience, but it was still competitive, so we still got into it, and it was great. Competition, one-on-one.
Aren't you a little young for Kumite?
Aren't you a little old for the video game?
And now, the popular pinball games of 1984.
Ian here with the popular pinball of 1984. Space Shuttle by Williams. This is the table that brought pinball back to the mainstream with an easy-to-obtain multi-ball, an excellent theme, and fun for all ages. Spy Hunter by Bally. This machine based on the arcade hit has such bizarre features as off-center flippers and a prominent mini bagatelle. Laser Cue by Williams. This insane mix of sci-fi, billiards, and fantasy is as much fun to play as it is to look at. And those were the popular pinball machines of 1984, because there's more to life than just video games.